With high pressure controlling our weather for the next week and a half at least, this could be a very short 10-day trend. But where's the fun in that? There's always something interesting to look at weather-wise, so let's take a look at the bigger picture. Here is that high pressure, and at time of recording, it's just edging in from the west. Fast forward through the next 5 days, and it will dominate our weather, but there is one or two things to point out. This cold front, for a start, driving in across northern Scotland during Saturday. That will introduce some cloud and rain and a cooler feel by the time we get to Monday. But the high is definitely the main focus, controlling our weather for the next 5 or 6 days and beyond, as we will see. Why so? Well, let's rewind and take a look at what's going on high up in the atmosphere and put the jet stream on, as we often do in the 10-day trend. And those of you who are regular viewers will probably expect it to be up here to the north, allowing this high pressure to dominate. So we're on the warm side of the jet. And again, not a lot of change over the next 5 or 6 days. The jet stays up here, taking low pressure systems and all the wet and windy weather towards Iceland and Greenland. It does dip south as that cold front moves through, and that southerly track to the jet stream will mix things up a little bit in terms of our temperatures through the bank holiday weekend. But generally, as I say, the weather's going to stay fine for the vast majority with that high pressure in control. Is it going to warm up? Well, no, not really. The high is building in from the west. That's generally where our air is coming from, not a particularly warm direction. Notice we're not tapping into the heat across Spain or Africa. We are just seeing this area of high pressure allow temperatures to maybe rise a little bit over the next couple of days because the sun is strong, so it just warms up naturally. But actually, as we go through the weekend, that cold front we saw earlier is going to change things and bring some cloud and rain, but also, being a cold front, will introduce cooler conditions from the north during Sunday and spreading further south by the time we get to what is another bank holiday Monday. So temperatures will be dipping a little bit. For the next few days, we'll see the peaks probably in South Wales, southwest England into the low 20s, generally around about average, but the wind direction is key. The sea isn't very warm at this time of year. It is warming up, but it's still not particularly warm. So if you've got the breeze from the sea, it makes a big difference. See the Northern Isles or the East Coast over the next couple of days. That wind direction is key, and that's all to do with the position of the high pressure. By the time we get to Saturday, we may have lost a bit of that easterly breeze on the east coast. Still a fairly brisk breeze blowing over northern Scotland as that cold front approaches. So staying cool here. Elsewhere, though, certainly for the bulk of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, temperatures around or a little above average, more widely over 20 Celsius during Saturday. But fast forward to Monday, and we're in that cooler air that we saw earlier. And again, with the breeze off the sea, some of these North Sea coasts probably feeling fairly fresh on bank holiday Monday, with temperatures struggling to get to beyond the mid-teens. And even with some shelter down to the southwest. Again, South Wales, southwest England, probably the warm spot. But even here, temperatures down compared to what they will be for the next few days. So it does look like through the bank holiday weekend, there'll be a lot of fine weather, a lot of sunshine around. Notice, though, the sun is strong. UV levels will be high, very high in places. So even though temperatures aren't going to be particularly high, that's got nothing to do with the strength of the sun. It's all about the position in the sky. And as it's getting into June, the sun is getting towards its strongest. So high UV levels. Don't forget the sunscreen this weekend, and the breeze will dictate the exact feel of the day. But after a lot of fine weather through the weekend, it will just turn a little bit cooler as we head through Monday for most of us. What about beyond that and into next week? Half term for much of the country, and well, the high pressure is likely to dominate. Again, regular viewers of the 10-day trend will recognize this chart showing the pressure trend. Red is high pressure, and there is a lot of red on this chart. Dates going forward along the top all the way through to the first week of June, and the previous computer model runs down the side. Don't worry too much about the numbers, just look at the colours. I'm just showing you this because there's a lot of red. A strong signal, not just from one computer model, but this is the multi-model outlook, so using the Met Office model and the European model. A lot of red. High pressure is likely to dominate, but As we've seen, the position of the high will dictate which way the winds are blowing, and that can have quite a significant impact on the temperature. So, do we know any more about which way the winds are likely to blow? Well, this chart breaks down what flavour of high pressure we're likely to have, with the different regimes that are likely, the different colours representing the 8 most common regimes, and a line going all the way to the top is 100% chance. So quite a strong signal. This dark red, which represents a negative NAO, which means basically slow-moving weather patterns will dominate the UK weather scene throughout next week. The date's going on the bottom now, and I say the first week of June. So the weather patterns are going to stay slow moving next week. High pressure is going to be nearby, so we're likely to see a continuation of the dry weather. And with high pressure, the air is sinking. That's why the pressure is high at the surface, and if the air is sinking generally, it's not going up, not creating clouds and not creating rain. So the dry and bright weather likely to continue through much of next week. Now that's when we look at the multi-model. This is now just looking at the European model, but when we run it many times to give more of a probabilistic look at what could happen with our weather. And this is picking out the chance, using the probabilities from the ensembles, the chance of seeing 5 millimetres of rain on any given day. So we're going from Friday through to Monday, and then through next week, Tuesday to Friday along the bottom. Now I'm showing you this chart because our Deputy Chief Meteorologist showed this morning at the brief, and said the UK is sticking out like a dry thumb, and I like that expression so much, so I wanted to use it myself. That's Stephen Keats's expression. The UK sticking out like a dry thumb there. Very little in the way of rainfall expected through the weekend and indeed through next week. The chances, the probabilities, pretty much a white map there. So the probabilities very close to zero, seeing 5 millimetres in a day. And even if we reduce that and just put 1 millimetre of rain, that's that cold front. You can see that's Scotland there. So there is the chance, or the likelihood of some rain from that cold front getting into Scotland. A high chance of 1 millimetre or more on Saturday. But other than that, again, most of that map is white, or at least if we zoom in, a very pale shade of green, suggesting the probability is somewhere between 1 and 10%. So pretty small chance of seeing rainfall even at the back end of next week. However, there is a chance. So we've gone from white to green as we go through the back end of next week, because there is perhaps a little bit of a shift in our weather patterns come the back end of next week, but it's fairly subtle. This is the European main model, the deterministic model run, and this is showing the pressure at the surface for Thursday, and there's that high pressure. You can see that black line there. If we look at what's going on high up in the atmosphere, the pressure now by these red lines also showing that high pressure is dominating high up through the atmosphere. So we've actually got high pressure all the way through the atmosphere. But if we fast forward to Friday, then things have just changed subtly. You can just about make out the black line of the high pressure at the surface starting to edge away, and there's some spots on the chart near over the near continent, and that's signifying rain. So just getting a little bit closer to parts of the south. And if we look at what's going on now high up in the atmosphere, again, from the European model, the deterministic model, we haven't got high pressure high up anymore. We've got this low pressure high up. So that's just a signal that things high up, which then lead to changes lower down eventually. So we could just start to see a bit of a change through the back end of next week. But again, for the vast majority, it does look as if most of next week will be dry. But that's something we'll be looking at, the possibility of some showers coming in from the south at the back end of next week. What about the temperature? There's been a lot of talk about heat recently, and we haven't seen much of that. And we're unlikely to see anything significant either. Now we're looking at the probability of seeing 25 degrees Celsius through next week. Notice a higher probability, a higher chance across France, as you might imagine. But further south, across Spain and Portugal, actually a chance of 25 degrees for large parts of Iberia is next to zero. They're going to see some wet weather next week and some showers moving in, because as high pressure dominates here, low pressure is dominating further south. But again, showing you this basically because the UK is very pale indeed, suggesting the chance of 25 degrees through next week is very slender, if at at all. Maybe some hints of green on the chart through the back end of next week across the south, suggesting we might have that possibility. But let's just focus in on the UK and show those in more detail again. As we start the week, as we've already seen, on the cool side, the chances of 25 degrees next to zero. Just a hint there of some green on the charts across the south for the back end of next week as we potentially tap into air coming up from the south. But it is a pretty weak signal. So for most places, we're not going to be anywhere near that mid-20s. It's going to stay at high teens or low 20s throughout next week. So the days will stay similar, perhaps getting a little warmer through next week. The nights are also going to get a bit warmer. I didn't talk earlier too much about the possibility of overnight frosts, but this isn't frost. This is the chance of temperatures getting below 5 Celsius, which is still pretty fresh for the back end of May. And you can see there's quite a high probability across Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland on Monday and on Tuesday, extending into Wales. So as that cooler air comes in, those nights will stay pretty fresh. And although this is for 5 degrees Celsius, you can imagine that in some rural spots there is therefore going to be a chance that we could get down to freezing. So just something for gardeners to note. But also note that that chance of temperatures getting that low through the week starts to diminish. So the nights will probably get a little bit warmer through next week as well. What does all of that mean for our weather through next week? Well, if you're on half term and you like it dry and sunny, you are in luck because, as we've seen, high pressure dominating, a lot of dry weather next week, not much chance of any rain, just the possibility of some showers back end of the week, something we'll be keeping a close eye on. Temperatures dropping off early next week, but then perhaps rising a little bit, but we're not tapping into the heat from Africa. There isn't any heat in Iberia, so this isn't hot weather that we're importing from anywhere. It's just the high pressure letting temperatures rise day on day because the sun is strong. The wind direction will continue to be key. The shape and position of the high will dictate where we have those onshore breezes, and with the breeze coming in from the sea, that will obviously have an impact on temperatures and the feel of the day. So for day-to-day details, whatever you're up to next week, make sure you stay up to date. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe, and you can watch all our daily weather videos. And we're obviously right across social, so make sure you're following us for all those day-to-day details.